I'm Brandon,
And I'm Brandon.
and welcome back to Apollo City Comics, your anything and everything comic book podcast. Dude, well, that's a lot of ums to start off this episode. That's kind of wild.
It's okay. There's a lot
But
happening.
I am excited today. We haven't done an interview in a bit, since what, like November, October. Life, got crazy. We got busy. The holidays happened, and we just did a giant introspective on Kingdom Come, which was way to two-part episode that we meant to do in one part. But it was just such an amazing book. We were too hyped about it, and you just
Yeah.
can't, avoid that. And now we're gonna be touching base on some Frank Miller through the winter. We're gonna do the Miller winter and
Oh man, I can't believe
touch base on
uh
some Alan Moore and just stuff we haven't dabbled on. We've been doing the show for 4 years, and there's just books out there that are our favorites that we've just never touched. And it's gonna be exciting just to kind of go
yeah.
back to those roots and like figure out some of our favorites again.
It'll be good. We've always like avoided the books. Like if you typed in top 5 Batman books, those are like the ones we wouldn't look at. Like
Yeah, exactly. For any of the comic book stuff, we try to dive into other things, Paul Pope and stuff like that. But yeah, it's other stuff is fun. I love Miracle Man. I
yeah.
want to talk about Miracle Man for a bit.
Oh, same here. Yeah. It's all
And
inevitable. It's all comics.
yeah, but what always draws us back into like the reality of as creators, as trying to get people out there, with the anthology we just put together, we just sent out the announcements, so everyone check your emails about that. And we're all about the indie comics. We're all about independent creators, and we love promoting independent creators because we are independent creators, and we would just love that same gratitude throughout the community. So we're going to kind of draw the strings back after that giant Alex Ross, Mark Wade before we go into the Miller Winter and some Miracle Man and everything. And we get to have a lovely conversation this evening with one of our favorite friends. And he's been on the show before. But you know what? Snuggle up and grab a cup of coffee that you probably got from coffeeandcomic.com to enjoy this awesome interview. And, dude, get your books bagged and boarded with some coffee, with probably a couple stickers tossed in there too with your receipt. Nice little hand drawn thank you note. It doesn't get more personal and comforting than that. And then you get that package in the mail and it's comics, and then you know how much cool stuff is just stuffed in there. Why are you not ordering from Frank over at coffeeandcomic.com? And in fact, you should shoot Frank a message right after you listen to this episode, because he could put in the diamond order for the book that we're about to talk about and get it into his shop and on his website, because tonight we're talking to Jason Douglas, the creator of Parallels. Jason, dude, how are you? It's great to see
What's
you.
going on, man?
Hey, gentlemen, thank you for having me back. It really took me back just now listening to that banter and listening to how good you guys are at your job, and
Thank you.
a bunch of fantastic comics that I've got my love for and opinions of as well. Oh wow, I just like went back into a warm, comfortable space. Talk about snuggle up, and here I'm back with my boys chatting about comics. So I'm feeling good.
Are you a big like Frank Miller, Alan Moore fan? I don't think we've ever talked that deep
Yeah.
about some of that stuff with you.
So I don't know if we really talked like my comic origin story last time or not, but I did that very typical like 9-year hiatus, from comics. Like I was a 12-year-old, I was a 14-year-old, I was all in, and then sometime in my late teens I walked away. And
Yep.
actually the only two books that I took with me in that, late high school, early college, and then into my 20s journey was Art Spiegelman's Mouse
Ooh.
and Neil Gaiman's Sandman. Those were the only two that followed me.
Yep.
Everything else kind of got left behind. But when I dove back in, right, mid-late 20s or whatever it was, and kind of, went back and became the adult version with a little bit more disposable income than I was when I was 12, which is like a collector that was like literally split 50-50 down the middle. Half of me was, as a 12-year-old, chasing the #1 issue, the hot book on the wall, keys before they were called keys.
Yeah, definitely.
Whatever a 12-year-old could afford, right? And whatever embossed silver foil die cut cover that Marvel was bringing out.
Man.
like half of me's chasing
man.
that. But honestly, at the exact same time, even at 12, even at 14, where that could have consumed my comic life, I was also about 50% fully dedicated to good stories, a quality built universe. That's why I was a Valiant kid.
Oh, nice. Interesting.
And like my favorite writers. like as a 12-year-old, did I watch Predator? Did I watch Top Gun until the tapes wore out? Yes. Was my also maybe my favorite movie All the President's Men and The Conversation, like New Hollywood stuff from the 70s?
Ooh,
Yes, weirdly.
nice.
Were my favorite heroes Batman, Spider-Man, and Wolverine? You better believe I love that garbage popcorn. At
Yeah.
the same time, as a 12-year-old, was I like totally jonesing for not only Sandman, but Sandman Mystery Theater?
Oh, nice.
Literally
Yeah.
a noir comic from from the 1930s that no 12-year-old it was marketed at all, and yet it was like my
Hmm.
favorite. Yeah, so like that 50-50 split. And I kind of bought back into that full force in my late 20s when I came back to comics. And part of my re-education, part of my almost like being a 12-year-old and exploring stuff now that I had the financial means to do a little bit more, was going back. It's like, going back to the classics. And that's when I hit my Alan Moore. And that's when I did, that's when I read the Swamp Man run. That's when I read Frank Miller's Daredevil run.
Yeah.
That's, that kind of thing. And it's kind of like that story you hear about the British blues masters of the 60s, like the Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, and Jimmy Page thing,
Yeah. Fuck
and
yeah.
how through that is how a whole new generation discovered Delta blues stuff of Robert Johnson and stuff like that, going back, 30, 40 years before that. Same kind of thing. Like, because I loved Sandman and because Neil Gaiman was friends with all those dudes, I went back to that late 70s, early 80s British explosion for most of those guys. It's where Grant Morrison came from too. And like read all the heavy hitters 20 to 30 years later.
Yeah.
And like educated myself on that and have been, pretty well versed in it since. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how those have become like the classics of like comics at that point. You know what I mean? Like, when you think about like The Great Gatsby and, F. Fitzgerald and whatnot, the Frank Miller and like Alan Moore fit in those puzzle pieces.
It's
and like
hilarious
book
because like
classics,
it's even got, it's just like music too, because it's got like, like 1967 is like flower. It's the year that Sergeant Pepper comes out and this and Pet Sounds and this happened. Pet Sounds might be the year before, but this happens and that happens and blah blah blah. But like you look at like 86 when Dark Knight and Year One are all like running at the same time, and Watchmen is right there, and it's like this golden year of comics in general and DC specifically, and it's got all those same kind of trappings and and I'm not like a history nerd at heart too, and so like to me any other world history or something like that. So I'm into knowing that this came out then and like studying the arc and then impact of EC Comics from the early 50s to the mid 50s to the decades beyond, that kind of thing.
Oh man, yeah, that's the funnest part, is just kind of seeing the parallels between what was happening in the books and like, okay, what was the like social structure like at the time? What was the political triumphs and failures and everything going on? Like, what outside forces influenced these books? And it's cool that you said that, kind of that comparison. Right now, I'm reading a Will Eisner, Frank Miller like interview book.
Oh, I know that book.
Yeah, and it's been
the interview book. Yes,
fucking brilliant, dude. Like, I've been just chewing at it for a few days, and it's just so much insight at once. And seeing Will Eisner, kind of the very beginning of comics, creating out of a kind of just like a day job type of thing. We got to get stuff done, and just Miller out of passion.
The most, obviously the Academy Awards of comics are named after him, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that like being some kind of whatever level of historian I am of the comic genre, I think one of the great ironies of Eisner is he is very, and I mean very, falsely credited with like inventing the graphic novel, right? Like that's just not like Contract with God is not the first graphic novel. If you take it as a definition of graphic novel, it like literally predates comics. It's like a 1800s, late 1800s, so late 19th century kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he doesn't get enough credit for literally being at the birth of the modern comic.
Yeah.
And being part of that whole thing and the factory system and all that stuff in the late 30s.
We know about Bob Kane and Stan Lee and like all these names.
Right, but like he's at literally the birth of the transition from the reprints in the mid 30s and the free comics to the 10-cent era to the houses that the publishing companies that built all that and the factory house system of like of having 10 dudes under you doing all your work and putting stuff
Yep.
out, and he's there with DC at the beginning, and it's incredible.
They talk about it
Yeah,
so
he
much in this
gets
book
too
too.
much credit on the one and not enough credit on the actual.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Quick random question. Does the book talk about his time in the military?
No, not so far.
Really?
He'll dabble into stuff like that, but
Oh.
brief
He
mention.
did. I've got a couple of those tiny mass market trade paperbacks,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
about yay big. Like I've got a couple of reprints of his army comics that he was doing officially
Yeah.
for the military. It's like called Odds and Ends or something like that,
Mm.
where he's like one of those dudes, like when certain actors went into the war, they were used in a different role besides combat, right? Like certain musicians played in a U.S. Army band instead of putting them on the front line. Not everybody did that. I mean, like, Ted Williams literally flew fighter planes throughout World War II and Korea, but like Eisner went in and they saw that the dude could draw, and he was established because, I mean, the Spirit had been running for a couple of years at that point. And he made all those, like, he was the cartoonist for all those military magazines.
Yeah, all the ads too.
Yeah,
and like
right.
instructions to like
reprinted in these old things, and it's fascinating stuff to look at.
That's all he really mentions within the book. That's it. He just talked, and there's like a couple sample pages of like the military manuals that he would draw and put like Hollywood stars and girls in them
too. That's right. Yes.
Yeah, he was doing all of that, and that's all he. I mean, at least so far, I'm only about halfway through, and it's very structured. They'll talk about inking for one chapter, and they'll talk about publishing houses another chapter, and they kind of break up the conversation. The way it's curated, it's really brilliant and so smooth. But you're absolutely right, Eisner. We're going to be doing a contract with God in the next couple of weeks too, because I haven't read it actually, and I believe Brandon has before.
Yeah, I read it. I've read it twice.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And it's just like one of those things. Eisner, like, when you even think about, creators of Superman, of course, if they need to be named and known, but like Eisner was there creating like comics and really defined comics as what we know. And we're still trying to catch up to how he did fonts and put in the words within the background and stuff like that. And he was just still ahead of his time, and all of us are still trying to catch up to him. But nobody it's not a common household name, even less than Jack Kirby. And Jack Kirby should be on the tip of everyone's tongues,
Right.
the way Stan Lee is. But I feel like Eisner, he's top of the mountain right there too,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I mean, speaking of creating comics, we brought you back on the show because you're getting a really awesome reprint of your book, and it's not something that happens too often, especially with indie books, where you're getting more story, you're getting more pages. Like it's like what, 50 pages that are added to this one.
Yeah,
You're getting
50 extra pages to the original one shot. Yeah, it is. But like, I mean, we talked about this before. There's nothing about from the day I sat down to type that first word of my very first comic script to today that is typical of the way comics are made, much less indie comics in the 21st century.
Yeah.
It's such a bizarre trip to get here. And so, the weird way that the first run of the book sold out, right? It was a flop on release because it was right into the pandemic. And it was like going on shows like yours and doing with that blissful ignorance of not knowing how you're supposed to create comics.
Yeah.
Like to go and just through irrational confidence saying, well, I guess what I'll do is I'll go do 75 interviews over 18 months on all these different pods and channels and stuff like that, because I didn't know better. And little by little, it like sold out in a way that indie comics don't sell out. And then word of mouth spread. And once the sellout hit, and then there's suddenly 2 Ringo Award nominations for Best Writer and Best Single Issue or Story. And like that weird path and that, end point of relative indie success results in this wonderful opportunity of putting it back out in the world with 50 more pages of content. Thank you, Ed Brubaker, for making really good back matter that, inspired me. And so I'm like really fired up about this because, and I was telling you guys this off the air earlier, like one of my favorite things about comics, or at least my favorite stories, are ones that not only have a beginning, middle, and end, that none of their purpose all respect to the big two and all respect to the business model
Yeah.
that has worked for them for 90 years, but it's not about stringing you along month to month, right?
Exactly.
Like
Mhm.
there is a complete story arc in mind. And then I think my favorite stories are always ones that had a certain amount of rereadability to them, right? Like you get to
Mhm.
the end and you love the characters enough, or you love the story enough, or like the case of Parallel, a lot of feedback I got was the ambiguity was enough where you wanted to go back and revisit it because you saw it in a different way the second time through. And that I always felt translated in a kind of crass sense to like bang for your buck, right? Indie comics are scraping for any kind of niche in the market that is dominated at the top. It's very much, the comic market is very much your cliched analogy of an iceberg, right? You see
Yeah.
that little tip, but indie comics make up the 90% below, and they're all kind of fighting to get a breath of air above the water level.
Yeah.
And so I was
Yeah.
always like from the beginning really concerned with, making sure that if you were going to spend a couple of your hard-earned dollars on my book and support indie comics and support an indie creator, that you are getting your dollars worth. And I've read too many collections, too many graphic novels, too many expanded editions, director's cuts, name it what you're going to name it, that the back matter was filler, to
Yeah.
be kind.
Yeah. I
And
totally get what you
so
mean.
these 50 pages, like I curated the whole thing. Like it was
Mm.
Source Point's idea, but like I worked my butt off to write an afterword that would be entertaining and in my voice that takes you through the entire journey of this really weird atypical process. Like I pulled together a killer cover gallery that has all
Oh,
those
yeah.
wicked cool that Donnie Darko variant and all that
So
good
good.
Mhm.
stuff, all the
Glad I
covers.
snagged one of those.
I
And this is a new
annotated a bunch
cover
of,
too, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I annotated a bunch of script pages, and it's not that boring. Like this is just labeling what the page was. Like you're hearing stories from me in these annotations about like, oh, I want to tell you about this scene because this was the scene that I wrote when I was on a date with my wife at a street fair, and she ducked into that store, and an idea hit me, and I literally sat down on a curb as beanbags are flying past me. These guys playing cornhole, and I couldn't keep it inside my head and had to write down this thing on a piece of paper from my back pocket, right on a curb of a street. So
That's
annotations like that.
amazing.
There's annotated concept art and early rough pencils. And then my favorite piece of the bonus material is I broke my promise that I probably even said on your guys' show that there is not more parallel to tell, because that
Hmm.
ending is the
Mhm.
ending. And I found a way, an idea struck me, and we were talking about I'm gonna watch how I bring this around, boys. So there's a 10-page brand new story
Hmm.
in the bonus material exclusive to this edition. And I'm kind of coining a phrase, if it hasn't been coined before, I'm calling it a between the panels story. And I was inspired by going back and reading some of those 80s Marvel comics specifically, where you get that editor's note where you're reading an issue, a random issue of Fantastic Four, and like a major event happens, and the editor says, and it's like between panels 7 and 8, the
Oh,
Infinity War
yeah.
happened, and you're like, what? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Your expressions didn't even change from panel 7 to 8, and it all kind of happened in between. And while I didn't exactly do that, what I did find was there were some deeper character moments, and some things that people were curious about that I found I did in these little 2-page segments where between this page and that page, between this event and that event, between this tonal change of the book and that tonal change of the book, we kind of pause and go and follow Landon a little further into that scene that moves to the next scene. We follow Claire and find out that connection with the detective that is very much hinted at and people kind of catch up on, but you see it happening in a bit more
Nice.
detail, and it kind of enriches the story a little bit more. And honestly, I personally believe that it brings a little more sympathy to the character of Claire a little earlier, because she's, in Landon's eyes, and I think a lot of people's eyes, Claire's kind of the classic villain of the first half of the book, and then
Yeah.
you kind of see the emotional wrecking ball that his life is, and you start to feel sorry for all the people around him in the second half.
Hmm.
But I think this brings even a little more depth to the fact that, she's a whole human being in her own right, that is trying to live as best as she can, while, this person that truly does mean a lot to her, as life falls apart around her. So that was a lot of fun to be able to go back and revisit my old friends, and give everybody a little more insight into what happens between the panels, between the pages, between the scenes. And I think it really kind of, you get to go a little bit deeper, and it just enriches it. It's something that I already felt was brought a lot of bang for your buck. So that was definitely on my mind, to bring value to a new edition.
That's
Mhm.
awesome. That's good that you're like focused on not just filling it with, the bonus content, which is great, but like you're adding to the
Well,
story, and even your bonus content adds even more to the story of you,
I,
you
I
know?
can't I can't imagine that I'll ever get to a point, however long this dream come true journey lasts for me. I can't imagine that I'll ever get to a point where I'll have been a creator longer than I was a fan.
Mhm.
Like right now, it's a 95.5%. Like, it's a very imbalanced scale. I've been a fan decades longer than I've been on this side of the table at a convention, and and so when I write something, when I build something, when I think about it, like, it's always on my mind.
That's
Like
awesome.
I it's about, I flash back to being 12 and going, this is cool. I want other
Mhm.
people to think this is cool too,
Hmm.
not just, I've got a story to tell. Sure. Would I love to make more than a small little handful of dimes on an indie comic? Yes, of course I would. But really, it's my fandom outweighing everything else. So when I produce, it's like, hey, this is so people can dig it.
That's
Mhm.
great. Yeah, because I mean that's the best approach, approaching it as a fan because you know what, we all kind of want, and you know what you would want in a book, just like what you were saying.
Yeah.
And
I
that
mean,
you can't go wrong with that.
you you're literally, you've already brought it up. Like, you're looking at it from the perspective of like the other side of the table. You're like, if I were to read this book,
I gotta
how would
pay
I
this
want to enjoy
much.
it?
Got it.
Yeah.
And also selling a book, an indie book, especially, I've tabled with lesser known comics, and I know how hard it is just to get someone to like stop and swing by your booth or even pause for a
Mhm.
moment. And, we're always offering free crap just to get someone to walk over to the table, and
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
that hustle.
And
It's rough, especially in the
the
comic aspect. Like,
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be honest with you though. So when I was finally able, and this was like at the end of like the sellout run of the first print of the book, when I was finally able to do cons, I loved it.
oh
I
yeah.
Mhm.
loved the interaction, and I kind of thought about it the same way. It was like all the interactions that I'd had at cons as a fan, the bad ones, for with either, especially at the beginning of that con run, um, pitching and selling the book and
Mm-hmm.
interacting with people who
Mhm.
gave you their time of day. And by the end of it, like by the time I got to Baltimore for the Ringos, and we were like selling out the exclusive con variant, right, at Baltimore with the Ringo stamp on it. Literally having fans of the book, because that 18-month process had happened, like come up, and how I interacted with a person who's that's might be their only interaction with me ever, was very much informed on the good experiences and the not so good experiences I had with my own heroes over the years before that. And I found that, like, my day job as a public school teacher, the skills of standing up in front of eighth graders, 8 hours a day, and trying to convince them that like grammar isn't boring, and the show that is involved in that, and the
Mhm.
natural repetition of like selling a joke or selling a line like it's fresh for each hour,
Oh,
was like the most invaluable skill
damn!
standing on the
I
other
wouldn't
side
have
of the
ever
table.
thought about
Oh, I could
that.
imagine so. Yeah.
Like a perfect translation. It blew me away.
That
Mhm.
was
Um,
a mind blowing thought in my head in general. Wow, that's cool.
Well, because like
That's
I am, and I'm sure a lot of people are like this, but like the unknown is what terrifies me the most, right?
mhm.
Mhm.
Like that new experience, even if I'm excited for it, like
Yeah.
I am not sleeping. I am freaked out. I am, and before my first event, before my first con, it was like, oh my God, what if I fail? I can't do this. And it was one of those mind-blowing experiences when that translation happened just like that. I was like, oh, I'm just teaching. I'm just doing the exact same thing that I do in front of class. And then those 3 days just become
It
Like, I know how to do this, even though I had never done it before. It was awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, it's all about engagement and just getting people interested, right? Like it's the same
Yeah.
idea. That's why it translates so well. Saying like, "Hey, check this out. I'm trying to show you
Yeah.
something," you know?
Yeah.
And like, yeah,
I
just
mean,
I
it,
mean,
it, it helps. It helps when it's like, and it's something you care about. But like,
Yeah.
I've been teaching for 23 years. If I'm any good at my job, you shouldn't be able to tell the difference. If I'm having the crappiest day of all time, there isn't a single one of my 180 teenagers who should be able to say, "Oh, I think he's not doing okay." Like they should never know, you know. So I kind of brought that same energy.
that's beautiful, dude.
Hell
That's
yeah.
great. I mean, and this is a lot of content that you've obviously worked on for a bit, and you've been, I
Mhm.
mean, pretty busy with a lot of other life stuff. Speaking of which, not,
Yeah.
Yeah,
letting people
yeah.
like, like read the room at a certain point, how you present things, and
Mhm.
you've been very open about your battle with cancer over the last,
Right.
year or so. When did you find the time to work on this during that process, and what was the like last year in your life like,
Yeah.
basically?
So, so if you, it's kind of funny because I mean, you can even take it back 2 years where as that comic journey
Hmm.
was kind of going through that last leg, which is all the interviews, the book selling out, the conventions, and then the nominations and the award show and stuff like that. As that was going on, there was a lot of personal tragedy in my family. And if you look at it from my three kids' perspective, they lost three of their four grandparents in a 9 month span. My wife's both of her
Hmm.
parents, and then my dad died suddenly as well. And so, like, you're going on one of those life roller coasters with like a huge high of this followed by a tragic low here. And this past summer 2022, was kind of supposed to be and going to be and was shaping up as kind of like, I don't know, I don't really have a good term for it, but kind of like a rebound summer
Hmm.
for us as a family of five, like a bit of, not putting things behind you, but like moving forward in a positive way. And we went on a couple of trips, and I was working on compiling the special edition, some of the materials for it, kind of leisurely taking my time on that, doing a good job on it, and also putting together all the last steps that we needed to do a successful Kickstarter for Jane American, my next project, which was supposed to be in August.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I was wrapping up with the 32-page one shot, and we were into the discussions of who our artist and our cover artist was going to be, and all these things were being built. And it was all kind of really going really well. And we came back, and we were going to start it in August. And we came back from this last vacation we went on, and I went in to get a routine colonoscopy because literally the year I turned 45, the law changed where doctors are supposed to recommend to you that you get your first colonoscopy at 45 instead of 50. And I'm a school teacher, I'm a rule follower,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
There
I
you
was
go.
like, sure, okay, it sounds unpleasant. I really don't want to do this, but of course, why would I
You're
ever say
like
no to a
you're like,
medical
"You're the
professional?
doctor."
And yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
went in and did the whole thing the night before with the sitting on the toilet all night and whatever, and it was very unpleasant. And I was ready to do the thing where I came out of anesthesia and trying to be a charm monster and like talk to the doctor like, hey, how's my butt, and like, some horrible joke is even worse because you're still half drugged. And I couldn't read the room. Talk about read the room. I couldn't read the room, but my wife could. And this dude like said, "You found something. You have a cancerous tumor. Here's what happens next." And it was just like absolutely like being hit by a truck. Um, Look, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but like the dude didn't have the best bedside manner. You could very much tell that this was either the first time or a very rare time that he had ever had to break this news.
Oh wow.
And it
Mhm.
was
Okay.
literally like the worst 48 hours of my life because
Oh, I could only imagine.
Yeah.
Jesus.
the the way it was presented to us, like, and this isn't just me. I give off a lot of positive energy, and I bring a lot of energy to a room, and I'm very proud of being able to do that. But like in my heart, I am a professional pessimist. Like I'm
Hmm.
good at it.
Yeah. I've
Okay.
always
Like
seen that
like
and
I
admired that.
you
Yeah.
can have a glass filled to within a millimeter of fullness, almost spilling over, and I can find a way to convince you that that sucker is almost empty. I'm good
Mhm.
at pessimism. And this was not me being pessimist. Like the way it was presented to us was, I my wife and I could not see a way that I was going to live more than a couple more months.
Oh man.
And so those 48 hours before the CT scan came back and said it looked right. I mean, you can't really tell until you do a pathology report and test stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
it looked like it was contained in the colon. But I had this tumor that had literally very aggressively grown to a kind of scary size in less than a year, because my blood work from the August before was clean as a whistle.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we're going and getting opinions and second opinions and meeting with this hospital and that hospital and this doctor. And it's going to be surgery, right? The first thing is surgery, and they're going to cut it out of me. And I remember another big kind of like panicky moment where I had to make one of these decisions that you really wish somebody else could make for you. Was I had met with my doctor at the hospital that we had been diagnosed at, and and the date for surgery was amazingly like 4 days away.
Oh, wow.
And we had a meeting with this other hospital, a hospital that has again, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, a massive reputation in my state. And I met with this doctor, and there was this conversation that just really, really struck me as, this isn't right. Because like when somebody talks out of both sides of their mouth, or like says something and it contradicts itself within almost the same breath.
Mm-hmm.
And this medical professional literally said in the same breath, doctors don't think about cancer in days and weeks. They think about it in months and years. And at the very same time, this is because he was telling me the first day they could get me in was about 3 weeks, almost a month away.
Oh, wow.
Right. And at the very same time, he admits that it's a very aggressive tumor that has grown to a massive size within under a year, and thus that's a problem.
Yeah.
And so we went with the original doctor, and we went with the original hospital, and I was under the knife on August 30th.
Yep.
And when they cut it out, they did 24 centimeters of my sigmoid colon and 27 surrounding lymph nodes, and tested it all. And
Brutal.
when it came back, all the lymph nodes were clean, which is the best news in the world. The margins were good. They got it all. But what they noticed was the tumor itself, in that short time span, had eaten through 3 of the 4 walls of my colon and was about to bust through the 4th. And had it gotten out in the open, then you're automatically at stage 4 and it's everywhere. And,
fuck.
I always, when I think about that moment, when I think about that phone call, that meeting, I think back to that other doctor and go, it could have been the next day. Like, forget months and years, it could have been the next day, an hour later surgery. Who knows? It was like that close. So there's that. And I move forward with standard care, which is blood tests every 3 months, CT scan every 8 months, and a new colonoscopy every year. And, the only problem with that is, and it's about as good news as you can get, but that standard of care with my kind of cancer results in 90% you're clean for the next 5 years, which is how long they test you. And there's a 10% chance that you have a regression and it metastasizes somewhere else. And it's usually not good, because it's going to attach somewhere that might not be surgically operable, right? It might attach to your liver, it might attach to your lungs, whatever. And then out of nowhere, my oncologist says, because of your age, relatively young age, I feel 100 million years old, but like for 45 is pretty young to get colon cancer. Because of your age and because of your condition and your results, would you like to enter this clinical trial? And the clinical trial basically was, there's this blood test that's been around for a long time. That's hard science that can test if you've got this stuff called ctDNA floating around in you, which is basically cancer, pre-cancer. It's at a DNA level. It's floating around looking for a place to reattach and start growing cancer cells.
That's interesting.
And that's your 10%, right? So basically, if you don't have ctDNA, you might get cancer again someday, but it's not going to be that cancer that they just got of you. If you do have ctDNA floating around, you are 100% guaranteed to get cancer again within 5 years. It's just waiting for a place to go.
Jesus.
That's why it's a 90-10 instead of 100% curative operation. So the blood test isn't what the trial is. The trial is because there hasn't been hard science yet that proves that you can kill ctDNA at that DNA level, circulating tumor DNA. So what happens is first you got to win a coin flip, right? Because if you're in the control group, they test your blood and they don't tell you. And then you just live your life and they see. And then if you're in the experimental group, they test your blood. And if you've got ctDNA, you go through 6 months of experimental chemo to see if this type of chemo can kill cancer at a DNA level.
Oof,
And
yeah.
basically, if this clinical trial, which is a national trial, plays out and they find success in a way to treat it at a DNA level, it literally changes medicine. Because what happens next is they start testing like a healthy 25-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And a healthy 25-year-old goes in for this blood test, a healthy 20-year-old, and they come out and the doctor says, so you're going to start chemo next month. And the kid goes, I've got cancer. And they're like, no, but you will within 5 years. So we're going to kill it now. That's what this trial is about. So I win the coin flip and I'm in the experimental group, which is like a big relief, right? Because they're going to test my blood. And then I win the lottery of all lotteries and I do not have ctDNA floating around, which like my guilty conscience, I like literally said to my oncologist, like, am I allowed to feel kind of bad because I can't help your study the way I wanted to? And he's like, no, you're not allowed to feel bad because this cancer's not coming back to kill you right now. We're not doing an experiment on you. So that was like the kind of the big news to end it. And then as I was telling you guys off air, all I got really left are like all these kind of nagging, terrible, awful, annoying surgical side effects about, a bladder that, I got to do a pee-pee dance every 30 minutes or something like that. But like, honestly, compared to that big bowl of death that was trying to kill me from inside, I'm walking on air. So
yeah,
a heck of an adventure, a heck of a journey, but I came out on it about as good as you can. And as far as like from the creative aspect, logistically changed things because I didn't do a Kickstarter in August. I had surgery instead. And that's not going to happen until May now. And we moved up the timeline of the special edition because so much of that was already in place. So that's like what I'm promoting right now. And then creatively, like I can already feel it. I talked about this earlier today. I can already feel it kind of like seeping into the work. Not necessarily directly. Like it's not like when I write the next chunk of Jane American, I'm suddenly going to have a character who goes through a cancer story. I'm not like Harvey Pekar. I'm not writing My Cancer Year Part 2. But I've lived a different life now. And I always think that kind of seeps in there, right? I mean, you look at the story of Parallel. I mean, we talked about this last time, like those dark, almost universal themes of dreams deferred and existential dread of time passing you by and the depression and anxiety that comes with that. I mean, Landon isn't me, but all those ideas came straight out of what I was feeling as I was letting this dream of creating a comic slip by decade after decade. Like, so it's going to be in my work. This whole experience will be there. I mean, you won't necessarily read it and go, oh, that's him referring to butt cancer.
Yeah.
Well, probably not, but thematically kind of feel it bleeding in, I think.
Yeah, I totally get that. That's, the past year for me has been like super insane and life changing, and I've gone through a lot since last December, and through all of it.
You moved a couple thousand miles.
Yeah, moved and just life gets crazy, as you know, and it's very unpredictable. And as like hardships happen and events, positive, negative, neutral, whatever, all my motto was the last year was like, well, it's all writing material, because it's all just gonna eventually boil up and it's gonna transpose into that somehow. And you live your life to write, you live your life to tell stories. Your stories come out of you and your experiences and the things around you, and life is writing material, and this is gonna somehow seep its way. I'm really curious, has this fueled you more to be, write more, to get more out there, to like, has your creative spark changed in that sense?
Yes and no. I mean, it's like,
understandably, if it's stagnant at the moment, because when you're coming out of stuff like this, it takes a while to recharge creatively in general.
Yeah. But I mean, there's like, I have a lot of play, but life keeps on getting in the way because it's like when there's like a mortality reality, like absolutely, you're like, oh, I need to do this right now. But that's not limited to your creative outlet. Like it's literally now every single aspect of your life. I need to be more present. I need to be more active. I need to be more here. So am I working as hard, if not harder in the classroom than I ever have in 23 years? Yeah. Am I doing more things and paying more attention to my children as they age and break my heart when they will eventually leave me and replace me in the world. Yeah. So at the same time as me being even more motivated to create and promote and live this wonderful comics journey that I'm living, there's more demands on my limited time in other aspects as well. So it either balances out or has even become harder, I think is one way to answer it,
I can see what you mean there.
So yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I feel something different. You know what? I was thinking about this today, especially with Jane American, the Kickstarter in May, my next project, the thing that means so much to me because it's kind of inspired by my late grandmother and definitely dedicated thematically to like all the young women and non-binary humans that have come through my classroom the last 23 years, because like the deep themes in it are gender and race and identity and self-fulfillment and living who you are, whether the people around you or your circumstances or society says you can't. The fact that's been happening in my classroom for the entirety of the 21st century, and then you extrapolate that back to 1946 when our 15-year-old female protagonist is living that same thing in an even more restricted society. It's always been heavy on my mind, but because there's so much family history and I've used a lot of family names and the main character is named after my late grandmother, the fact that her husband, my grandfather, who turns 99 next month, is still alive and still very, very excited to see this in print.
Oh wow,
I'm
that's
feeling
beautiful.
more motivation, pressure, and I don't know, just like a need to make that Kickstarter work so that it lives and breathes in the world, so that he can see it, with his living eyes, and be taken back to like all these names and all these experiences that he remembers from 80 years earlier. So I'm actually personally feeling more creative motivation / pressure from his mortality than even from mine.
Wow, that's even deeper than I would have ever expected.
Yeah.
I can't wait to read this, and I can't wait to dive into. We'll get you back on the show in May to promote the Kickstarter.
Do another one.
So I think I mentioned the unknown scares the crap out of me. So my atypical story on how parallel first print, parallel special edition comes into the world. I am now, for Jane American, fully into the typical way comics are produced in the 21st century, which is crowdfunding. You get that beautifully exclusive cover, and then you hope. And in my case, I've got Source Point behind me, publishing it as something that goes out in the world, and then finding a way to fund the larger 120-page graphic novel and all that stuff, which is. But it's new to me again, right, guys? It's terrifying to me again. So like the idea of doing this thing that I don't know how to do. Send me to a convention tomorrow. I'll sleep like a baby the night before, right? Tell me that I've got 20 interviews crammed into like 3 weeks before final order cutoff, and because I did those 75 before, let's go. I want to talk to the boys again. Let's do it, right? But because this is new, I am terrified of not doing a good job on it, terrified of not hitting that level of funding or whatever. So yeah, I bring me back in May, because I need all the help, all the support, all that you were talking about in your opening. Like those tendrils of the community, I think are one of the most magical things I found over the last 3 years.
Oh yes,
of this journey, where it was like I foresaw a bunch of the steps along the way, a few of them. I mean, not like a pompous, like, oh, this is going to happen, this success. No. But like, I knew there was a point where a page of art was going to come to me, page of completed art, and I would be like, 12-year-old fanboy. Yeah. I knew there was a point where, I letters on a page would be put to my words, and they'd be like, like I could foresee that. I couldn't foresee the Ringo nominations, and I could not on any level foresee the way this community works.
Yeah.
And the way we support each other, and the way like that tendril went out. I mean, that's literally why the first run of the book flopped and then sold out and got to where it did. It's literally why, as terrified as I am of May, I have this little pessimist that I am, I have this little kernel of kind of itchy burning hope right here that says, I think because of the people that I now know and the people that I now care for and trust, I think it's going to be okay.
I think you're going to have some good success. And you know what? We're running our first Kickstarter in March for the anthology we just curated. And, you know, anything we learn and can pass along to you for insight or help, by all means, we will set up a quick meeting and we'll tell you about all of it, you know? And we team up with Lesser Known Comics and they're really supportive. Mark over there that runs it is just a great guy. So, you know, if you need advice or help, I would encourage reaching out to Mark and he'll give you a few pointers for sure. And at least some advice on some aspects.
He keeps it real as well.
Yeah. And he's
doesn't beat around the bush.
He's why we got to make this anthology, and he's why it helped come to fruition. And I am fucking terrified of the Kickstarter. Believe me, too.
I know.
We were scared
the whole
about
all or nothing thing. Is just it's literally like it's like I would not be shocked if you told me that like the day before Kickstarter launched, or at the pitch meeting for it as a concept, there were like some people in a room who said, "Is there a way we can make this so insanely stressful for creators?" Yeah. How about all or nothing? Great idea.
That's it.
Let's go.
All funding or none.
It's wild.
So would you say when it comes to like with Parallel, it's like you're releasing the book with more content, right?
Yeah.
And redistributing it, kind of like marketing it and everything. Would you say then it's pretty much just as like, I don't want to use the word stressful, but I guess I will, just as stressful as the first time pushing it out there? Or do you feel like, okay, I've done this before, I have an idea, this is also the same book, give or take, so a little bit more prepared this time.
Level of success wise on it too, you know, in that aspect.
I think there's a combination of, I've got like really high functioning OCD, which means I don't have a middle gear. It's either everything or nothing, you know? I mean, that's the way I am with the comics that I love, the music that I love, the books that I love. It's like, give me all of it, or just, I don't even like the greatest hits compilation is like the bane of my existence. Like I have no desire for you give me everything that artist produced.
Exactly, dude.
I can't do singles or a single track. I can't do playlists.
I need the whole album.
Yeah, I need that whole album on there. I need to know all.
And I need every album. Like, I don't care if the Clash made Cut the Crap. That's going to my collection. God damn it!
Right.
Like, but
so I'm living that same kind of thing with this, where even if this was supposed to be easier because of prior knowledge, because some of the content already existed and it's more like compiling and curating. I mean, also, it's not the way I approached it, right? Did I have a nice little runway to build this project and build those extra 50 pages? Sure, I did. And then right now I'm actually feeling like, now that it's literally in this month's preview.
That's fucking wild. That's so cool.
I am feeling just as much pressure and stress as before, not because I relaxed and said, oh, I don't need to work as hard, or I can just kind of ease into this, but because circumstances of life took away some of what would have been my lead time of building time, so that I would have come into this even more prepared than the first time. And I'm not saying I'm not, you know, I'm doing my level best of talking to people and getting the word out there. I mean, the Instagram algorithm is screwing me over, and
always,
you know, stuff that like I'm getting like 1/5 the eyeballs on stuff because of the algorithm I don't understand.
Yeah, 100%. I hate social media and promoting.
Social media.
I think I told you guys the first time, like as a public school teacher, like I had zero, and it was like part of my original contract with SourcePoint, where it was like, listen, dude, it's indie comics. You've got to self-promote. So if you want this contract, you've got to at least do one. And so I picked Instagram and I put my heart and soul into it. But like,
kind of what we did too.
The teacher, you say the wrong thing, post the wrong thing, and it's a bye-bye job. So like I was a 0 footprint.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's 100% true. Yeah. You got to be careful what imprint you leave on social media, especially as a school teacher. Like anything can be held against you.
they catch it because like the irony is it's what we preach to kids, right? The
Yeah.
permanency of everything you post, and then like some idiot teacher goes out drinking on a Thursday night and posts a pic, and suddenly they're not your teacher anymore. And it's
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
okay, come on. So I've been really careful with that, but like, yeah, I'm still working really hard and just as stressed because, I don't, because I'm that all or nothing guy.
Mm-hmm.
I still want it to succeed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't, there's nothing, so I'm sitting there going, okay, should I reach out to this shop? No, I should reach out to all the shops.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm feeling a lot of those similar feelings I did the first time around. I guess the difference is I have self-awareness of it this time. So in some ways that's even worse. You're like, I know how hard this is and how grueling it is. And I don't get to have a night of blissful ignorance before the big day because I know exactly what that big day is going to be.
It's kind of just like going to the gym after you haven't gone in a really long time. You're just like, I know it's good for me, but this is going to suck. Like, this is going to be brutal.
Hurt
like,
as much as it does.
Yeah.
It's also like, like thinking about just like the anxiety of like putting a book out no matter what, whether it's your first time, second, or fifth time. It's almost like, I don't know, it almost sounds like that election the night before. You're like, oh shit, what are the results going to be the next day, guys? Like, did we make it or not?
And like some of the cons that I've worked at, like I'm behind the booth with like literally grizzled veterans of the trade, like 10 years in, 15 years in of like a grueling con circuit. And I'm wired, I'm like so excited about this opportunity. And I remember last year I asked current editor-in-chief of SourcePoint, Josh Werner, I'm like, do you still get as excited as you did in the beginning? He's like, no, I mean, I still love it, but it's not the same. It's with anything in life. You get desensitized to certain things, right? And yet, I mean, again, like I said, I'm still 95% fan, percentage wise, timeline wise, but man, I don't feel any lessening of the excitement. I don't feel any lessening of the energy, any lessening of the honor it feels to have something out in the world, any less of the anxiety than I did on day one. And I'm not saying that won't change over time if I'm allowed to continue doing this. Thanks, All or Nothing Kickstarter. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I don't foresee it. I foresee, I mean, I'm still jumping on tables 23 years into my teaching career. I bet you I could be an old man creator on the concert and still going, hey, can I tell you about my book?
Yeah.
I would not be shocked if that's still me, blah, 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 years from now.
That's awesome. Have you looked into like printing, or how you're going to print the book, who you're going to go through? I'm just kind of curious.
Digital distribution, how that's going to go? Like, what's the process with that?
For Jane or for this?
For both.
Both.
Yeah.
Well, this is literally in previews as a SourcePoint Press book. So you're ordering either through, you can order it either through sourcepointpress.com. You can order it through your, like the Dimond. God, I got to memorize this. I got to get good at this.
Let me see.
It's JAN 23 1872. So January 23 1872. You can do that. Lunar's got it's up on their website too. So like, there's all these different ways to order it. So that's that's out of my hands. And because it's, material that SourcePoint and I already owned, except for the new story that we produced and Josh Sobek did the art on, it's something that's already in that kind of indie comics machine where they are printing it and putting out in the world. And then
do they have a digital store for stuff, or do they relate to like Kindle or Comixology? Or I'm kind of curious. I haven't looked into too many of their other books to find that out. So
like the original Iron Apparel had its digital version too. I'm assuming this one will as well.
Cool.
And then I haven't looked yet, but you can probably find it on Comixology. And then so it'll be there. And then as far as Jane goes, Jane is going to be my Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Right. With funding the printing, funding the fulfillment, but SourcePoint Press will do those fulfillments for me. So it's like they're going to send it, whatever. And then the plan would be, that 32-page one shot, all my backers get their digital copy or their hard copy or you go higher and you get your even fancier metal cover or whatever it's going to be.
Cool.
And you get your exclusive cover. We've got a pretty nice cover artist that I'm not going to reveal right now, kind of lined up. That's like, wow, that's a bigger name than I'll ever be, kind of thing.
Wow,
And
man.
you get that, but then the plan would be blah 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 months down the road. It's back in previews. It's back available to order as this month's one shot from SourcePoint. And then
Cool.
we start playing the funding game of trying to get the 120-page graphic novel out with the entire Jade American story.
Man, it looks
Nice.
like you have a lot of work ahead of you. I'm
Yeah.
super excited
I've got a
for
lot
all
of
of
work ahead of
this.
me.
Dude,
Yeah.
you kicked ass at beating cancer.
Yep.
So that's the first and foremost. Again, congrats, dude. Like seriously, it's one of those things that like it's 100% scary, and to be able to come out on top and just free and clear is one of those things that's like I can't imagine there's a feeling that can get better than that. Like
I like looking back at it now with a little bit of time and a little bit of perspective. It's hard for me to see like the role I even had in it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like I did none of the I did not participate in the surgery. I was asleep. You know, did I work my butt off on recovery? Yes. Was I walking 8 miles a day when everybody else is walking 1? Yes, I did, because I had to win recovery. I literally set, God, this is embarrassing, but I'm kind of proud of it at the same time. I literally set an unofficial hospital record for getting discharged faster than anybody else after colon surgery. I got
Nice.
out, they let me go in under 48 hours. It was supposed to be 4 days to 2.
woo.
Oh, wow.
Like I really wanted. That's the high functional OCD, guys. All or nothing. I need
Yeah.
to win recovery.
Yeah.
But like, it's hard. I remember talking to you guys the first time around about having to be careful with the comics conversation about using the word lucky.
Mhm.
Because like the way Parallel came about was very lucky for me, right?
Mhm.
It's not how comics are produced in the 21st century. A publisher like taking, holding your hand and walking you through the whole process, unsolicited script. It just doesn't happen that way. And getting Adam Ferris as my artist and getting Bob Sally as my editor, and it all felt very, very, very lucky to me, right? And like people much more seasoned than I are like, be careful how you're saying that, because you're underselling yourself, and you're also underselling all the other people who worked really hard on this with you. And I was like, okay, I get that. I gotta back off on the luck.
Uh,
I don't know how much of it I did. I'm here, I'm grateful, but like it doesn't feel, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
no, that
feel
totally
very
makes
lucky
sense.
rather than,
You
hey,
worked hard and
yeah,
like achieved
I
this and
took that
gone to
knife.
this level.
I cut that big chunk of my lower intestine out. But I did. I mean, like for being a self-proclaimed professional, I believe I've got 2 advanced degrees in pessimism. Except for a couple of dark moments here and there, I projected for myself and more importantly for everybody around me who cares about me, a positive attitude through it all. And I know I helped too. So like I know I worked hard to beat cancer, but it also I feel really lucky because
Yeah, you're
I
a
don't know.
humble
I
guy
don't
too.
necessarily like to give myself that credit where I don't feel that I deserve it.
Yeah, well, you totally deserve it, to be honest.
You
And
do.
seeing your story and all that, but also being humble about it. That's a good thing too. You know what I mean? Like
And
you know that the circumstances and how hard this is to achieve, and you achieved it. And I'm sure it's still
Well,
hard to wrap your head
have
around.
a 3rd advanced degree in self-deprecation.
There you go.
Which is a very useful
Yeah.
tool with 8th graders because they can't eat you alive if you make fun of yourself before they can.
Yeah,
But
I
it's
bet.
also something I very much believe in. Like when I'm my harshest critic, it's not a defense mechanism. It's how I feel. So I appreciate the compliments. It's very hard for me to accept them, but I do appreciate them.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, of
And
course.
I think it's okay to feel complicated about it too. Like anytime you survive any sort of like life altering change or threat, or you just happen to get a book published, it's okay to feel conflicted because there are other people that don't hit that form of success.
I have my version of Survivor's Guild. I have a massively advanced diagnosis of imposter syndrome and just about everything I do. I'm very good at both of those things as well. Yeah.
But it's okay to feel that way. It's like that's totally fine to have those feelings. It's just you're still here and you're still kicking ass. So it's also something that you can't absorb all at once. You got to take it in strides. It's like, okay, shit, I just published the book. Oh shit, I almost died. Okay, I'm alive now. Like it's a lot to digest. It is.
And then if you ever, even for a moment, allow your ego to inflate a millimeter, I've got a wife and 3 children who will let me know. No, not impressive. Go do the dishes.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
You're back from the hospital? All right, well, we got some shit to clean.
Yeah. This room has been waiting
Dude,
months.
I was swimming the floor 3 days later.
Yeah. You are the kind of guy. I can totally see you're the kind of guy to like get out of surgery, be like, "Bud, I gotta change the fucking battery to my car, guys." Like,
I'm sure your wife was like, "Oh, you recovered in 48 hours? Well, you know what? The floor hasn't been swept in 3 months. So what about that?" Like,
yeah. She's like, "You're still alive, goddammit."
Were you in my house? Did you record it? How do you know that?
Oh, yeah.
I was also gonna say, to your point, before I forget, really random. Every comic book, I always say this, every comic collector has OCD. Tell me if I'm wrong, anybody, but if you're collecting issues 1 through 100 and you flip out because you didn't get issue number fucking 48 because it was a different writer, you're lying your ass off. I know I've done that. I know Brandon has. I know he's got some comics that he did not want to buy. He still bought.
Oh, yeah. There's a whole Batman run.
I may have. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to confirm or deny this. I have had a long-standing rule about when I do my collecting that I'm an in-person. I'm digging through long bins, right? I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I got screwed on an online purchase pre-eBay a million years ago, and then I was like, oh, never again. And I may have made, maybe not, my very first eBay purchase late last night because I came home after what I thought was purchasing a 1 through 6 run of something, and issue 3 was not in there, and I was like, "Oh no!"
Yep. See,
like,
everybody's done it.
Literally, I was that dude who, on my hunting list, I would wait years to get issue 68 of whatever, and if it took me 5 years, it took me 5 years.
Yep.
And I was like, you know what? I don't know if I got 5 years, so I made my first eBay purchase of all time last night because I did issue 3.
Yeah.
I was so like, oh no.
See, you either do that or you have the random issue sitting in your safe for later, and you just wait to like pull the trigger to finally buy it. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious now. So you're putting out the special edition, you're putting out your next book, you're living life, teaching. What's next after that? What's after May?
So after May, it's going to be a combination. I mean, May itself is going to be a combination of signings and cons, because like there's this overlap that life and situations kind of pushed on me timeline wise. So if you think about special edition, it's being solicited now. I think final order cutoff is like February 20th for January previews, but it drops on March 29th. Right. And then a month later is Free Comic Book Day and con season starts up.
Yep.
And May is the Kickstarter month. And then, the Kickstarter so that gets fulfilled. And then my artist has got to do the next 27 pages and we got to fulfill that. And I've got to make sure the next 120 pages are done at the same time as, doing the interview thing again, hitting the cons, doing, look, I just booked an event today for Free Comic Book Day, right? Like a signing. And something I didn't get to do the first time around because of the pandemic. And so it's going to be that swirling mix of what's the movie this year? Everything, always, always, all the way.
Everything and anything all at once.
Yeah. Literally that will be, and hopefully somewhere in there, my dream. And this isn't even like, I hinted at like a big name cover artist for the Kickstarter. This isn't even that. This is me actually putting something out there to self-actualize it. I'm going to try to will it into existence. My dream would be to actually co-write something with my current editor on Jane American, Dr. Christy Blanche, who's the co-writer of Gun. And she is, she's brilliant. She's amazing. Literally, killing your darlings when your editor makes you cut something, can be brutal. I have not had even a half an interaction with Dr. Christie where it's not just like brilliant. I love her edits. I love it. It's collaborative editing. It's beautiful. And
That's awesome.
My next dream would be to write something with her for sure.
Nice. You got
That's
At least you got something on the
So
horizon.
you heard it here. I'm willing it into existence. And if she listens to this, I think it's now in the ether. I don't think you can say no anymore. I think that's
there you go. There,
hey, you say it out loud, it makes it just as you have just a better chance of making it happen. You know? Yeah.
Man, well, Jason, this has been awesome and insightful and inspiring. Like 5 minutes into this, I just wanted to like stop recording and go write comics. Like you always fuel us so much. I can't thank you enough for being on the show and making some time. And
dude.
Us, like,
absolutely, my pleasure. I mean, no. Listen, this is always the hardest part because, like I know. Okay, I'll tell you this. I've done so many of these now that what I noticed, a pattern that I noticed is sometimes when it's like people I really enjoy. And like I think that's how I opened. It was like, oh my God, it felt very warm to be back with you guys. As good, 6 hours a day with 180 teenagers. Like I gotta be verbose. I gotta be good at talking, right? Sell a couple hundred books at a time. You gotta be good to talk with people. But like when it's that true heartfelt thing, and I get to the end of like this pod, and I'm like, I find myself a little tongue tied because I need you guys to understand the appreciation that I feel for you guys giving me some of your time, for you guys being so freaking good at your jobs and so successful and wonderful as creators and hosts and everything that you guys do so well. It's like that thing that I said, it like warms my heart to know that I'm like, I've got that connection with you guys and part of that community because it's allowing me to keep a dream alive. And I appreciate you guys to no end. So thanks for having me on.
Of course,
dude. And we appreciate the shit out of you.
Our success is your success. And we've always kind of thought that with indie creators. Like, we want to get big and get out there so that we could get your guys' name big and out there. And, we love growing as a show, and we've grown so much with different creators over the last year. We've had the least amount of episodes come out, but we've had a bunch of growth. But it's like one of those things it's exciting because everything else that comes out, it's going to benefit everyone we have.
Quality over quantity, gentlemen.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And just, I've always said when it comes to like this community, you can't afford to make enemies. You got to make friends, and you got to like always just kind of have each other's backs and just be open to hearing each other out. The moment you start burning bridges or cutting people off, you're not helping yourself. You're not helping them either.
Yep.
Truth.
Exactly. So. Well, until May, we will have you on for the Kickstarter. We'll help promote that. We'll be sharing and posting, and we'll talk to Coffee and a Comic, Frank, and get your book ordered into his shop. And I would love to have another copy of it with just more material. I'm really excited about that because it's such a fun book to get. But man, thanks for hanging.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you.